What is up, guys? In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Bug Blaster in Fortnite Chapter 6 Season 4 because I think this weapon is actually really good and incredibly underrated. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, comment down below what you think of the Bug Blaster, and if you guys would like to use my code in the item shop when getting anything, it is EvolveJake, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So, the Bug Blaster is an item that you can find in the Bug POIs. When you eliminate the larger ranged bugs, they will drop a Bug Blaster, but you can also sometimes get it from the nests or the stashes around the POIs. And to my knowledge, the rarity you get of it is just completely random. It'll be either blue, purple, or gold, and I haven't been able to find any sort of trend which kind of makes sense as to why the rarity is the way it is. I think it's just completely random. But it doesn't really matter that much because the damage is about the same regardless. This can be shot normally or charged up for a harder hitting splash damage shot, which is very good. The uncharged shots, I believe, will hit for 45 damage-ish, depending on rarity. I don't know exactly the damage of each of them. And then the charged up shot will hit for 100 with the higher rarities, and then I believe 90 with the blue rarity. So regardless of rarity, the damage is basically the same, so it's not really that big of a deal. 45 damage for the uncharged shots, about 100 for the fully charged shot. And a lot of players kind of view this as something that's just good for killing the queen bug and the queen POIs, which is true. It works incredibly good there. But it's also very underrated for dealing with enemy players still. And this is something that a lot of players seem to think is just terrible because when I've used it on stream to get gameplay for this video, I've gotten asked about it a lot. So, because the fully charged up shot does splash damage, this makes it incredibly good in stalemate fights where you know where the enemy is or what piece of cover they're playing. If you're behind a rock and the enemy's behind a tree, you might not be able to see the enemy, but you could shoot it at the ground next to where they are and get a good amount of damage to initiate that fight. A lot of times people kind of panic and start moving because they got shot, and then you might just be able to full AR them. If you're ever above somebody kind of looking down at them, it's very easy to get splash damage. Just any sort of slower fight around cover, I think the splash damage potential for this item is very good. And with the recent changes we've got to the game, the pace has slowed down a lot with the removal of the medallions and the removal of the shockwave launcher. Feels like people play a lot more passive now and a lot slower. And so these stalemate kind of situations where you're just both kind of around cover seem to happen a bit more than they did previously. And, it doesn't even need to be a stalemate. There could be a situation where you're behind your cover, the enemy is behind theirs. You shoot at them, you get the better of them in that fight, and then they kind of go behind their piece of cover to heal. That might be a situation where you could just full on finish them with the charged up Bug Blaster shot. Similar to this, the Swarm Strike rocket launcher, you can kind of shockwave yourself up and then shoot this down on enemies. Any sort of splash damage weapon works great for that playstyle. And the Bug Blaster is no different. It does have to be charged up, so, it takes time to do that in some instances. But you still get 100 damage, very easily. And I like to do this a lot when pushing enemies. There's a lot of situations in this game in Zero Build where, you'll exchange shots with an enemy, and then they'll go behind cover and to heal, and you want to push them at that point. So if you're shockwaving onto somebody to push them, you can be charging this Bug Blaster as you're doing that, and then basically land on them with a fully charged Bug Blaster, or shoot them with it shortly before you land, tagging them for an additional 100-ish damage, and then that's an easier kill for you to clean up. It should be much more damage than they've been able to heal in the time it took for you to push them, and make it much easier for you to win that fight, rather than it going a bit longer. The longer your close range fights are, the worse that probably is for you, because the damage potential for shotguns in Fortnite is so high. And so hitting people with this as you're pushing them makes it, just much easier to clean that fight up and reduces your chances of taking damage in the fight, which is very good. That's kind of the situation I've liked it best, is when I'm shockwaving onto somebody just to land on them with it fully charged. It also will do a good amount of damage to vehicles. I believe it does about 480 damage. And I have had times where I hit enemies in the car with the splash damage of this, but it doesn't seem super consistent. I think the Bug Blaster damage will be blocked by the windows if the window is there. But if the window is broken and you hit the player inside, you should be able to get splash damage on them like while they're in the car, which is great for situations where, you know, you just tagged somebody a good amount and then they hop in a car. Not only do you do a lot of damage to the car, but you potentially get them out of it, and you're keeping your AR loaded in this time, which is going to be helpful if they start, like, if they get out and start shockwaving away, you know? A lot of times this season with the ARs not having very large mags, if someone's just running in a car, I might blow their car up, but I always have to reload afterwards, and then, like, that's just more potential for them to get away. So the Bug Blaster to destroy cars works surprisingly good. And at this point in the video, I'm sure a lot of you watching are probably like, the Swarm Strike rocket launcher does all of this, and it does more damage, which is definitely true. The Swarm Strike rocket launcher, the way they play and like the play style you can have with them is incredibly similar. And so why would you want to take the Bug Blaster over the rocket launcher? There's not very many reasons, and there's not very many important reasons. So like one of the main benefits of the Bug Blaster, I think, is just that the shot travels faster than the rockets. So you give less time for your enemy to react, which will matter in situations where you're dealing with better opponents, especially in those stalemate situations. If there is any sort of range involved, a lot of players will have an opportunity to just like move when the rockets are getting to them. And you can guide the Swarm Strike, but your element of surprise is probably gone, you know? You also don't have to worry about damaging yourself with this as much, which is nice. With the rocket launcher, if you're kind of using it in that situation I outlined where you're pushing an enemy, you have decent odds of hitting yourself with it if you're too close to the enemy. And that, you know, may cost you the game, or, you know, may cause you to use heals. Whereas this, I don't think you can damage yourself with it. And if you can, it has never happened to me. So that's good. Also, with last week's changes where they vaulted medallions, Fortnite also did reduce the spawn rate of rocket ammo. So if you are using the Swarm Strike rocket launcher, that may end up being a problem. I feel like in practice, this isn't really the biggest deal, especially once you get into the mid to late game. A lot of players you eliminate will just have a full inventory of rockets. But if ammo has been a struggle for you, that's not something you have to worry about with the Bug Blaster, because each Bug Blaster just has a certain amount of uses. I think the blue and purple ones have, it might be like 30 for the blue, 35 for the purple, and then 40 uses for the gold one. So ammo really isn't a concern, and reloading also isn't a concern, which is nice. And you can also guarantee you will get the Bug Blaster from the bug areas, whereas finding the Swarm Strike might be a bit random. So even if you do end up preferring the rocket launcher, this would be a way for you to have that similar playstyle and a weapon that kind of fills the similar niche until you end up finding the rocket launcher, or until you end up finding enough rockets. But just based on damage potential, the Swarm Strike is higher, and most players will probably prefer the Swarm Strike more. But that doesn't mean the Bug Blaster is terrible, because you won't always have the Swarm Strike. So overall, I think this Bug Blaster is incredibly good. And as I said, it's very underrated so far this season. I don't see very many people talking about it, or like when I was using it, as I said, a lot of people seem to be confused. So I think it's good. I think it's underrated. A lot of players are always fixated on like what is the meta or what is the best thing to use. I think as things stand right now, it's pretty open. Having, you know, a double pump setup with like the OXR, or with a rifle, heals, mobility, and then the Wrecker Revolver in the pump, I think that's very good. Dropping the pump for the Swarm Strike, I think, is good. Dropping the pump for extra mobility, I think, is decent. Dropping the pump for the Bug Blaster, I think, is good. Like, all of these loadouts and setups are very good. It just kind of depends on your preferences, your playstyle, and what you want to do. I think with the removal of the medallions, like, how dominant double pump was kind of reduced a bit by that, but it's still definitely a very good setup and something that's going to be incredibly lethal in close range. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, comment down below what you think of the Bug Blaster, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.